Hi guys, welcome to the channel. I'm Officer Bloke Daz.
I'm Gaynor.
Here we are, Officer Bloke Daz Sports Edition, and that is not Aidan.
No.
So Aidan's not in today.
No.
So he had a night out last night, overdid it, and he's been subbed.
Yeah.
So we're on the subs bench, and Gaynor's stepping in for him today. So there you go. Soccer player killed for scoring a goal. I know what this is. Someone sent me this video to have a look at. Thanks, Lauren, for sending me the video. This is Escobar that played for Colombia.
Okay.
In the, I think it was the '94 World Cup. Didn't score a goal, he scored an own goal. And he got severely punished for it. Let's get into it anyway. Soccer player killed for scoring a goal.
As a kid, all he ever wanted to do one day was play for his country. He did just that and became a real Colombian hero. He was one of the best defenders in the world. But after scoring a goal in the 1994 World Cup in the USA, he went back home and met with a hail of bullets. This is the story of Andrés Escobar, Colombia's much-loved number 2. Before we get into the sad and frankly unbelievable tale, let's just get one thing straight. Football, soccer, football, which is it? We've already used both terms. Much of the world gets peeved when they hear Americans say soccer, but those people should hold back with their complaining. The USA did not invent the word soccer. The British did. It comes from association football. The English first called it a sock, and then a soccer, and then soccer. The word's got nothing at all to do with the so-called American ignorance and arrogance. We hope that clears some things up. Andrés Escobar.
I never get into it with anyone when people say soccer. Whatever you want to call it, call it whatever you want. Don't matter to me.
Tomato,
tomato. People say it's rubbish and they don't like it. I say don't watch it then. Simple.
Yeah.
It's something I watch a lot of, and it's whenever I get a chance. I mean, you know what it's like when we go out for dinner. I have my phone on the side with the match on.
Very rude.
So, if there's a match on, it's on my phone.
But the thing is, what I found when we lived in the States, that you could play football every single night of the week, soccer every night of the week.
Well, I was playing a lot, wasn't I? I did play a hell of a lot when I was there. I think sometimes 6 days a week I played. But it was, I mean, I love the game, but it's not worth going through what this guy's gone through.
No, nothing's worth it.
But I can't remember what I was going to say there. I've lost my train of thought. But yeah, let's go.
The gentleman of football, the man who has gone down in history not just as an amazing football player, but the guy that scored the deadly goal. He cut his teeth like most football players playing on the streets, putting down 2 jackets for goalposts on each side and going at it for hours on end with a bunch of other kids. But Andrés was special, and that soon came to the attention of scouts. When he was coming up as a player, people outside of Colombia rarely heard anything about the country if it wasn't about drugs or violence, headed by a man who would become famous, one Pablo Escobar. Andrés and he weren't related, but they'd meet one day. Pablo Escobar was also loved by many, mostly the people whose lives were a constant struggle in a country where wealth wasn't exactly distributed even close to evenly. Pablo actually built the football pitches where many future stars started playing. What's quite amazing is that he actually owned the country's best team, Atlético Nacional. Sure, he loved the game, and he supported it in many positive ways, but he also used that team to launder untold amounts of drug money. Other cartels following Escobar bought their own teams too. Football and crime weren't too different from one another, a matter of importance for today's show. Now we come back to the other Escobar. Andrés started his professional career with Pablo's team, Atlético Nacional. He then went to play in Switzerland and later returned to his home country to play for Nacional again. He became captain of the national team, and an outstanding captain he was. But Andrés also tried his best to clean up the image of Colombian soccer. He wasn't just a gentleman on the pitch, he was a spokesperson for the game in general. That might not have put him in Pablo's good books, nor any of the other cartels. He played for the national team since he was in his early 20s. In the late 1980s, he helped the national team qualify to play in the 1990 World Cup, at a time when Colombia was seen as a bit of a backwater team on a continent that had the likes of Brazil and Argentina. He was seen as an indomitable player, hence he also got the name the Immortal Number 2, a rather striking epithet when you consider what happened to him at such a young age. When he was 27, he was called up to play in the next World Cup. That was the 1994 FIFA World Cup, held in the new home of world soccer, the United States. At this time, Colombia was no longer seen as a backwater team. They played with verve, with style, and were a pleasure to watch.
You remember they had Carlos Valderrama? Do you remember him with the big curly bushy hair sort of thing? For those who don't know, Gaynor's big into soccer as well.
Yeah.
And it's our season's just started, so it's Aidan and I went to the first away game the other day, and it starts at home for us on Saturday, which is we'll all be going to that, won't we?
Yeah.
But I knew about this story, but I didn't know the history of the story.
No.
Where it was about where he played and who that. I just knew what had happened to him.
Yeah.
In the qualifying stages before the finals, they'd come to the top of their group. But something else they did was nothing short of spectacular. They beat Argentina twice in the qualifying games, 2-1 and 0-5. No one had ever seen anything like it. Argentina was a runner-up in the previous World Cup and the winner in the World Cup before that. David had become Goliath. That's one reason everyone couldn't wait to watch their games in the US. One of the greatest players ever to grace football fields with his studs, Pelé, even said Colombia might win the entire tournament. When Pelé talked about football, people listened. He told the world that if Colombia didn't win the cup, they should at least get to the semifinals. They were that good, possibly as good as Brazil. The trouble is, when you say things like that, some people just think about money. It was said drug cartels in Colombia put a ton of money on Colombia to win. Pablo Escobar was killed in 1993, but that didn't mean the war on drugs was over and the Colombia cartels just packed up and started stacking shelves at the local supermarket. It meant a power vacuum, and it meant violence. Things changed after Pablo's demise, but the cartels weren't any less vicious once he'd met his end on a hot tin roof. So, in 1994, when the World Cup finals came around again, there was a violent turf war in Colombia. The king was dead, but blood flowed through the streets where the children kicked their footballs. All the people of the country wanted that year was to ignore all the violence and watch the beautiful game played by their now great team. Tensions were really high, as were expectations. For the team, for the public, for the betting drug cartels. Colombia played their first game against Romania in Group A. The date was June 18th. Many people had said Americans wouldn't support this great event, but they were very wrong. The USA's World Cup shattered attendance records. In the opening stages, 91,856 people turned up at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena to watch the colorful Colombians take on a very good Romania team. Romania scored in the 15th minute, and then their amazing player Hagi made it 2-0 in the 34th minute. The heavy betting cartels were likely shooting bullets into their TVs at that point. But then Colombia got a goal back through their striker Valencia. The cartels might have put their smoking guns down at that point. Romania scored another goal close to the end of the game, and it was 3-1 Romania. What didn't bode well for Colombia is in Romania's next game, they got spanked 4-1 by Switzerland. The US had already drawn a game with the Swiss, so Colombia wasn't looking in good shape at all. Then came the game that changed everything, the United States versus Colombia. The US, still not seen as a traditional footballing nation, was the underdog. Colombia really had to win. Early on, the Colombians had a shot kicked off the goal line by the US. It was an amazing stop. The US, sporting some of the worst hairstyles in modern history, attacked a lot too, in what was becoming a very exciting game. It was end-to-end stuff, as commenters like to say. Then, in the 35th minute with the American...
We didn't qualify for this World Cup,
No.
England in '94 and the USA. But I think we were talking about hosting of World Cups and stuff like that. I know a lot of nations, the recently was in Qatar, prior to that was in Russia and places like that where you get, I think they're looking at hosting one in Africa. In my opinion, it should be just the ones that can host it properly.
Yeah.
And the USA is definitely one of them that will be on there to host it. I think they've got the next one in what year are we in now? 23. So it's 2026. I think it's in the USA.
Yeah.
I think it's USA, Canada, and Mexico. Well, I know it's them three countries that have got it. So we could probably go to that World
we'll
Cup.
go to that one, yeah.
Americans on the attack, Andres intercepted a crossed ball close to his team's goal. He got a bad connection and put the ball into his own net. Devastating can be the only word. The cartels at this point were probably shooting other people's TVs. In Medellin, Andres' sister was watching the game with her 9-year-old son. When his uncle made that mistake, the kid said to her, "Mommy, they're gonna kill Andres." She looked at his sweet face and assured him, "No, sweetheart, people aren't killed for their mistakes. Everyone in Colombia loves Andres." It was an unfortunate mistake. And anyway, Escobar had to make that intercept because if he hadn't, the US player next to him would have likely gotten the ball and scored. He did what he had to do, but the Angels at that minute weren't smiling down on him. Colombia lost the game 2-1. They won their final game against Switzerland 2-0, but with only 3 points, they came bottom of their group and didn't qualify for the rest of the tournament. An entire nation was in a state of utter despair. This was supposed to be their year. When he arrived back in Colombia, Andres tried to placate the people of the nation when he wrote an article in the country's Bogotá's El Tiempo newspaper. He wrote some wise words, saying, "Life doesn't end here. We have to go on. Life cannot end here. No matter how difficult, we must stand back up." That sounds a bit serious for a game of football, but trust us, the loss went right to the heart of the nation. Remember, this was a country that was being torn apart by violence. Football was the one thing that really gave people some hope. Andres wrote something that he had no idea would be etched in Colombian history. He said, "We only have 2 options, either allow anger to paralyze us and the violence continues, or we overcome and try our best to help others. It's our choice. Let us please maintain respect. My warmest regards to everyone. It has been a most amazing and rare experience. We'll see each other again soon because life does not end here. The climate of fear at the time was so much that many people advised Andres to keep his head down for a while as someone might want to hurt him. He didn't listen, not because he was arrogant, because he didn't want to show weakness and let the scourge of the nation think he was scared. His coach warned him not to go out for a while, but Andres was determined not to let fear win. He said,
This reminds me of when David Beckham missed a penalty.
Was it a penalty he missed?
Yeah, it was a penalty.
No, I don't think that was Beckham. Beckham, he got sent off. The hatred for Beckham was when Diego Simeone fouled it. When he fouled Diego Simeone fouled him. He said something, and he kicked out at him and got sent off.
Right.
In the World Cup, that's what happened.
But he had to go into hiding.
He did. He got a lot of threats on him. But that was the hatred towards David Beckham.
Yeah.
Was when he kicked out at Simeone to get sent off.
Right.
But you hear about it loads in football where people make a mistake and it's like people come after them, the hatred that goes, and for me it's pathetic. It's bad. We had a young Bukayo Saka missed the penalty. He was only like 20, I think, at the time. Missed the penalty, knocked us out of the World Cup or whatever it was, or the Euros, can't remember which one. But the hatred he got online, racial abuse and everything, it's pathetic.
Yeah,
and it's bad, a young kid, you know what I mean? And this shouldn't get nothing like this should happen on this. It's pathetic. It's it just needs to, it's a game at the end of the day. I mean, it's passion. You know what I'm like at the football. There's no one more passionate than me when I go and watch a football match. And but no way would I take it beyond levels like that. I wouldn't get personal with anyone on a personal level like that. No chance.
Said to the coach, "No, I must show my face to the people." July 1st, less than 2 weeks after his own goal, Andres went out with some friends for a drink. First, they hit some bars in the El Poblado neighborhood of Medellin. Then, after midnight passed, they headed to El Indio nightclub. At around 3 a.m., Andres was sitting in his car in the car park when some guys walked up to him. An argument started when the men insulted him for scoring that own goal. Always the fighter, Andres didn't back down. And then came a sound which was too familiar to the people of Colombia. Bang, 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 and more bangs. A witness later said, all of a sudden we heard gunfire, and then Escobar was on the ground, groaning and clutching his chest. He had 6 bullet holes in him. He had no chance. It was reported that after every shot, the assailant had shouted "goal" in the same excited pitch that South American football commentators are famous for. Just before the assailants left in a Toyota truck, one of the men hissed, "Thanks for the auto goal, you son of a..." You know that last word. At first, people said this wasn't an argument that had gotten out of hand. Police said this wasn't spontaneous violence, it was an execution. After that, all the players on the team had to walk around with bodyguards. The coach, having done his crying, said, much to our disgrace, Andres will go down in posterity as the symbol of the internecine violence that remains the country's greatest challenge. Colombia mourned. The world pitied the people of that country for having to put up with this. The World Cup, for a brief moment, stopped and held a minute of silence for Andres. Later, 120,000 people attended his funeral. But who were the killers? Why did they do it? Could the cartels really be that brutal over football? Pablo Escobar, with respect for the game, would have spun in his grave on hearing his namesake had been murdered over his own goal. He might have had thousands killed, including hundreds of police and judges and politicians, but he loved football. He would have never sullied the great game with an innocent man's blood. The two Escobars actually met, which Andres wasn't exactly over the moon about. He once told his sister, "Maria, I don't want to go, but I have no choice." Then Pablo was dead, and a kind of anti-Escobar cartel came to power. These guys weren't so much in love with football, but in love with what they could gain from football. An expert of the cartel said the boss was dead, so everyone became their own boss. Pablo had prohibited kidnappings. He ran the underworld with complete order. Anything illegal, you asked for Pablo's permission. Now there was chaos. Even the Colombian coach knew this. He told the Guardian newspaper, "When Pablo Escobar died, the earth shook, and the wind cried Pablo Escobar." As of that moment, you had to be on guard at all times. You couldn't trust anyone. Even a policeman could be good or evil. In short, this was a bad time to score an own goal. No one could protect Andres. But what happened was also a bit of a mystery. The story says that brothers Pedro and Juan Gayon, former traffickers with Pablo Escobar who'd gone over to another cartel, had committed the crime. The story goes that they made a massive bet on the game and obviously lost. They paid a bodyguard, Humberto Castro Munoz, to kill Andres. The Gayon brothers had approached the prosecutor's office after the murder with $3 million in hand. They said, "Here, take the money, and don't say we did it. Blame it all on their bodyguard." The bodyguard then admitted he'd done it, and no one had told him to. Some people still believe this is true because the bodyguard only served 11 years in prison, a very short sentence for murdering one of the country's most cherished people. The Gayons never served a day in prison, even though they were almost certainly there that night. They were the ones with the power. A bodyguard would have not dared make such a decision on his own. Then there's another story. It goes that the Gayon brothers did get into an argument with Andres, but they hadn't planned to kill him in revenge for his own goal, and the fact that they lost money, Andres had simply returned insults, and those guys weren't the kind of people you insulted. That's what a former hitman for Pablo Escobar said happened. This guy, Jon Jairo Velasquez Vasquez, aka Popeye, killed over 300 people for Escobar. He later became a bit of a celebrity killer and then died in 2020 from cancer. But before he died, he said he knew exactly what had happened that night. He said it was a case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. He explained, Andres' mistake was talking back to those guys. The Gayon's egos were so inflated after taking down Pablo Escobar, they weren't going to allow someone to talk back. Not even Andres. It had nothing to do with betting. It was a fight, that's all. As Andres said right after the game, words that he had no idea were to become his closing speech to the world, life goes on, and people have to keep trying to be positive, which is exactly what the people of Colombia did. Sure, there are still drug cartels in the country and there's still drug-related violence, but it's nothing like the past. The problem, though, is that it's all still about the 3 C's. As long as there is consumption, much of it in the USA, there will always be a cocaine problem, and as long as it remains illegal, there will always be cartels. The money is just too good not to risk your life for. But football will outlive drug wars and violence. Andres Escobar understood that very well. Now you need to watch how Pablo Escobar spent his billions, or have a look at El Chapo.
Sad, wasn't it?
It's very sad. He's,
Yeah.
especially
What,
when
27 years old?
Yeah, I'm not sure how old he was when he died. He said 27 before, but I don't know if he was 27 when he during the World Cup. It might be before that when he was talking about his age. I'm not sure. But even if he was late his 30s, but he's still very young and it's still the wrong reason for it. But that story at the end kind of makes sense a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That he's got into an argument with them and
not back down.
these drug lords and things like that, just they don't like being told what to do. They don't like being having the finger pointed at them and being yelled at, disrespecting. But it's just a shame when it comes to it's a sport I love most. You know, it's I want to see people getting abused or hurt or anything like just for a mistake they've made or the way they play or who they play for. It's just wrong. It's bang out of order. You know, you can have. I mean, you know what I'm like on the terraces. I have me say. And it's banter. There's nothing. There's nothing. Shake hands at the end, and we walk away, and we all go our separate ways. All my friends, they all support the opposite teams. They know whether it be United, Liverpool, Spurs, Arsenal. Don't matter who it is. They've all got friends who support them all. And we always have a good laugh and a joke together. But that's about as far as it goes. You know, we don't take it any further, and that's how sport should be. Sport should bring everyone together, not put everyone away, because it's the best thing you can do. Is watch sport. And I think. Anyway, hope you guys found that interesting and enjoyed it. Thanks again, Lauren, for sending the suggestion. If you've got any suggestions as well, drop them in the comments or drop us an email, officeblogdaz@gmail.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.
Cheers.